Well, hey guys, Thorzax here. I was asked to do a segment with Fortunecookie and pretty much go around the whole thing about Shooter's Coffee Chat. And I really didn't know if there was any real subjects or anything like that that I could really cover. And, I was thinking about it and that sort of thing. And, you know, um, me and Loads of Bacon have became good friends, and I talk to him. We converse, and he said he brought it up. And he says, no, Dave. You need to do this thing. Just go ahead and do this thing. Just go ahead and have this little segment on your show about Shooter's Coffee Chat and kind of get the ball rolling on this, because there's a lot of things that you say during your videos that a lot of people never really even thought of before. So anyway, so there we go. Now, as far as subject, that's where I struggled. I didn't know what kind of subject to really get on. I wanted to approach something, and I don't want this to come across as an insult or anything else like that, okay? Some of us are just recreational shooters. We go out there, we go to the range, we throw some rounds down range, we pound some lead in the ground, and we high five each other, and everything's great. And we go down to Denny's, and have some coffee and some pie with our friends, and we talk about it, and we go home and we feel good about ourselves, and we put our guns away. And there's nothing wrong with recreational shooting. I mean, going out there and shooting some tin cans and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think one of the things that you guys have noticed about my show is, well, hey, Thorzax, how come you don't have any fun? You know what I mean? You're not out there blazing away in the countryside somewhere, Well, I got to a point in my shooting career where shooting like that became kind of a waste of my time and a waste of my ammunition and a waste of my resources, because I was so enthralled and so integrated with shooting sports that I really didn't have time for that. And it became a mindset of mine to try my best. And it became the way that I shoot now. Now, if you notice something about Fortunecookie, he's the same way. Steve is exactly the same way. He'll go out and he'll make his best shots. He crafts his ammo very, very carefully. He's trying something new. And here's another thing too that he brings up that we all should be doing. Try to save a little money. You don't have to go out and spend thousands of dollars to get accurate ammunition. You don't have to spend all day dribbling in every last little 1/100th of a grain, to get that standard deviation. And if you like that, that's fine. I mean, if you like doing that, that's great. My thing is, the less time that you spend on the bench, the more time you're going to be spending out there shooting. And all of this, and dribbling and doing all that other stuff and weighing these and weighing those and sorting and inspecting and all that stuff, it all adds up to this. When you go out there and you put your finger on the trigger and you got your sight alignment in and you got your point of impact, your point of aim, and you start to squeeze that trigger, okay, that's where all of that pays off, okay? So, to me, where you should be spending your time is at the end of the butt of that rifle. That is where you need to be. You can hone your ammunition anytime you want, but honing your skills in shooting only comes one way, and that's through discipline. And that's the reason why they call it a discipline. True? So you have to discipline yourself to shoot, and you have to shoot correctly. And you have to shoot the same way every time. You have to take every single aspect of that into account in your head while you're shooting. Okay? That's why it's really tough. Now, here's here's something that I've kind of noticed, and hats off, really, hats off. Johnny's Reloading Bench. He's coming out with a video every day in the month of August. If you haven't tuned in on his channel, I suggest you do so. I've got a lot of respect for the man. Okay, he's very analytic. He's very conscientious about his reloading. He's a good shooter. I mean, he's not out there just some local yokel, pounding some lead in the around, shooting tin cans. He's trying to shoot really nice tight groups and stuff with average rifles and trying to craft the best ammunition he can. Now, one thing that Johnny does have that I don't have, and that's a shooting range in my backyard. If I had a shooting range in my backyard, that would be awesome. I could really spend a lot of time, doing that. Well, anyway, so the thing is, though, you have to shoot right, and you have to watch out for bad habits. If you shoot, here's the deal. When we would have a guy show up at, like a 2700 we haven't seen in a while, it's really funny. I mean, that guy will shoot like, high expert or low master or something like that. And you don't see this guy at the 2700s a lot. And the reason why he shoots higher scores is because he doesn't pound himself into the ground and get stale and bored with the sport. And that can be a killer. If you shoot too much, your scores will even out and then they'll start to drop. Okay? And the reason why is because your attention span is starting to drift because you're getting tired of doing it. Okay? This is where the discipline comes in. You have to discipline yourself in order to shoot. Okay? If you're pushing yourself to shoot every day or shoot, at least once a week, you have to discipline yourself to shoot the same way every time. And line the sights up, squeeze the trigger, follow through, all that stuff. You have to do all that stuff the same way every time. And, get ingrained in that where it's second nature to you. The real fight that goes on in shooting is when you start getting stale or you get bored with it. Those are the things you have to fight mentally, because mentally that will start screwing with you and you're going to see it in your groups downrange. You really will. I think I mentioned it the last time. I shot two guns. I shot my M1A in tournaments, and then in the championships, like the regional, or if we had the Washington State Rifle and Pistol Association championship, I'd always shoot my AR-15. And I gave this analogy is that what I did during the season is I would work out with that 150 pound barbell, being the M1A, and then when it came time to go ahead and shoot for the gold, okay, all I had to do was just grab that 50 pound barbell. You see what I'm saying? Which was the AR-15. We had guys that shot AR-15s through the season, okay? And during the tournaments, they were always there in the winner's circle, and they were smiling really big, and they got their awards and that sort of thing. I really didn't shoot those matches for winning purposes. I shot those matches to train myself, and that's what I kept in the back of my mind. So during the state, championship or the regional, when I was in the winner's circle with my AR-15, I would look at these guys that always kind of they were cocky, they were, overconfident, they had a whole bunch of advice to give everybody, they just thought they were God's gift to the match line and stuff. And I'm going to tell you something, man. I used to look at those guys, and in the back of my head, I would think, if this was the stock market of match shooting, I just bought and sold you, dude. I could buy and sell this guy. You see what I'm saying? Because what I did is I worked out, conditioned my mind. I shook it up a bit, and I shot to get better at shooting, not shooting to win. if that makes any sense to you. Everybody wants to win, and what's the point of going and competing in something if, the point is to win? But the thing is, though, you're not going to win unless you practice. And the only way that you can really practice is by competing. That's all competing is to me, is practice. Okay? That's all it is. Practical practice. Because when you go out there on a Saturday afternoon, and you're going to practice some offhand or something like that, you're not going to remember those mistakes. You're not going to remember what you did. You're not going to remember what went wrong. But you're going to remember that in a match. I'm going to tell you that right now. You're going to remember what you did wrong. And you're going to remind yourself during a match not to make those same mistakes. And so that's the whole thing that I'm trying to portray there by competitive shooting. When you go into competitive shooting, yes, winning, being the best, that is the goal. It is. However, it's not the destination, it's the trip. You understand what I'm saying? It's the journey to get there. And in order to go on the journey, you got to take in all the sights. You got to know where you're at. Okay, you got to be able to recognize where you're at on the road while you're trying to get there, right? Does that make sense? So that's my thoughts on that. Now, go ahead and give me some feedback. I mean, if you think I'm wrong, or if you think whatever, that's fine. This is just chatting. It's chatting. This is just talking. These are my feelings. These are my opinions, okay? And, you can take it for whatever you want. I see the reloader dude, for instance. He goes out and he's a competitor. He loves the sport. He loves his sport. I mean, he absolutely just salivates. Steel Challenge, IDPA, all these things. Okay? And he's pushing himself to try to get better. Now, I'll tell you what, he knows what I'm talking about. When you make a mistake, you're going to remember it. When you have a malfunction that was your fault, you're going to remember it. And you're going to make sure that you don't make those mistakes again. You see what I'm saying? And so that goes with all the disciplines, whether you shoot shotgun, you shoot pistol, you shoot rifle, bow and arrow, anything like that. You're going to remember those mistakes when you're competing, but you're not going to remember those mistakes going out and shooting horse turds. You see what I'm saying? Because it doesn't really matter then, so you're not going to really remember it. Shooting should be fun, and shooting should be enjoyable, and it is enjoyable. It is. It's a great thing to do. However, shooting does become work. Okay. That's when you really have to start realizing that when you're out on the match line and you make those connections with other people and you start having relationships on the line with the other guys that are shooting, guys become your friends, and then you start talking about this or talk about that, or what works, what doesn't. And I'm going to recommend this to every single new shooter. When you're out there, you go to the 2700 and you see these guys, and they're like, and they're holding their pistol and they're, shooting these small groups. It's better that you just peel your ears. Okay, just peel your ears and shut your mouth, because sooner or later those guys are going to start talking to each other about the different alloys they're using, the different lubricants they're using. They're going to talk about how they overcame doing this or overcame doing that sort of thing, and just be polite and just pick up those nickels, dimes, and quarters that they're dropping on the ground. I mean, pick them up, put them in your pocket. Pay attention to those guys. Those guys are the best. They've honed themselves. They demand to do the best. You see? And that's where you get experience. That's where you start really enjoying shooting. It's not about the guns. It's not about the calibers. It's not about any of that. What it is, it's a learning experience to do better and to excel at that, and to discipline yourself to do things the same way that you've always done them all along, and making sure that every single shot that you've done is just like the last one. And, if you get a bad shot, say like for instance, you're out there and you shoot, you got one out there on on the 8 ring or out there on the 6 ring or whatever. Don't let that bother you. Don't let that get in your head, because if it gets in your head, then that's negativity. The only round that you have control over is the one that's in the chamber. True? The one you just shot, all the scope hugging and looking in the spotting scope and all that stuff, looking at where that round went, is not going to change the value of that shot. Just mark it down and move on, and try to think about later on what you've seen in your sight alignment that might have threw that shot when you're making precision shots in bullseye. And the same thing goes with any of really, like IDPA or any of that. I mean, just try to remember what you did wrong or what you seen at the moment that the gun fired, okay? And the only way that really judges that is that watching your sights. If you don't watch your sights, you don't really know what happened. You didn't follow through. You didn't follow through with your shot. So you don't really know what you're doing, right? So anyway, that's my rant or whatever. Good coffee. I always buy Folgers Colombian. It's the best. I mean, they have Morning Harvest and they have, Breakfast Blend, and they have this, all these different Folgers brands, of different, Black Silk is actually pretty good. And here we live in the Northwest where we have Starbucks. And I'm going to tell you something. I used to drink a lot of Starbucks and fresh burnt ground coffee. And what happened was, I don't know if it's just the Scandinavian in me that came out. I finally got to the point where I was like, man, I just want a regular cup of coffee. I mean, all this custom roast stuff is great, but I was raised, on Folgers. I mean, my mom and dad, they always had a pot on. I grew up on a farm, and if you could ask for it, you got to drink it. You can drink it, but you got to drink the whole thing. You can't just act like an adult and have a cup of coffee. I mean, this is something you can ask for it, but you got to drink it. So, yeah, that's the way it was when I was growing up. Yeah, well, I'm about talked out for right now, so this has been, Shooter's Coffee Chat. Tune in to Fortunecookie 45. If any of you other guys want to get in on this, just want to shoot the breeze, talk about some of the experiences and things that you've went through, just leave it in the comments, either mine or Fortunecookie's, and, join in, start a little corner here and we can get a little coffee table thing going where we sit down and we talk about what the heck is going on, and that's part of all of this community. So there you go, Elvis and Johnny and all those guys. I mean, everybody. I mean, you guys are all invited to, to get your 2 cents in, I mean, that's what this is all about. You guys got any questions or anything like that, just go ahead and write them down in the comments. And if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know, So, I'm not going to try to, pull the wool over your eyes. And, that's one thing I really don't want to be. And that's a know-it-all or anything like that. So anyway, until our next coffee chat, this is Thorzax. And I will be getting out to the range here pretty soon. The range reopened on Monday. And what I want to do is I want to get the K31 out there, and I want to try out the new sights and all the and the new cheek piece. And what I would like to do with that rifle is I would like to go ahead and do some offhand shooting at 200 yards. Set it up, get my shooting jacket out, my shooting glove, get my hat on, the whole bit, get the spotting scope set up, and, just offhand, 200 yards, no sling, no nothing, just, holding, shooting. Shoot like 10 rounds, go down and score it. I haven't done that for a long time. It's been over 10 years, and I'm extremely rusty, but I'm gonna, and it's gonna take a while for me to get back on that horse. I used to be really good at it. Anyway, so, Thorzax, and until next time, checking out. You guys have a good day, and leave comments, share, like, and subscribe, And also, I wanted to also bring up another thing too. Timothy Robinson, if you haven't seen his channel, tune in over there. The guy's got kind of a zany way of thinking. He's just a blue collar, hard-working guy, and he really loves his guns and he loves his reloading. He's got a real passion for it. Go ahead and tune in on his channel. Another guy who's became friends with me is Willie Young. I guess he has an M1 that he wants to rebarrel, and he was like, hey, I can send it to you or something like that, and you go ahead and if you want to work on it, blah blah blah. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something, Willie. If you get here to the Seattle area, you look me up, you come over to the house, we'll have some coffee, we'll go out in the garage, and we'll go ahead and rebarrel that M1. I mean, I got all the tools and the whole bit. I mean, I've got the chamber reamer and everything. I've done quite a few of them. But when it comes to that sort of thing, I'm not a licensed gunsmith. I mean, I would rather stand there and show you what I know about it, okay? And there's some YouTube instructional videos out there how to do it. But rebarreling an M1, there's no real trick to it. Actually, rebarreling, there's no real trick to that. I think Savage has a collar on their 110 series that you can just undo the collar and just screw a new barrel on there. As long as you headspace it, you're in. So, rebarreling's not a big deal. Indexing can be a big deal, but rebarreling's not really that hard. So anyway, Thor's Axe, you guys have a good day, and I'm out.